Hey all, welcome back to a dram of diving. We have been officially doing this for 1 year now, and on this 1 year anniversary, we are looking at we have Shearwater joining us. We're giving away a free Shearwater Peregrine, and we have a brand new studio that you guys might have seen me. I was on the TDI live chat last week, and we've got that going on. So brand new studio, more whiskey, more shelf room for whiskey, and I got a couple of bottles I need to thank people for. And we're going to get to everything in a minute. As you guys know, or are just joining us, we do have in the comments, you can find our SoundCloud. This lives in a podcast also. We are hosting 1 year from right now a Dirty Dozen trip where Drama Diving is a special guest. There are a few spots left for that, not very many. Click the links in the comments to go ahead and sign up for that. And then, as always, we want to thank our Patreons. Real quick, before we get started with our guest, I want to thank John for the Dad's Hat Rye Whiskey. We're going to drink that one tonight because he requested that. And then Matt Crow for the Port Charlotte, heavily peated. He said I got to throw an ice cube in that one. So I don't really have ice yet set up in the new spot. So we're going to set that one to the side. I'm going to pour this one, and we're going to have our special guest come on from Shearwater and introduce himself. So welcome. How we doing?
Doing great. Thank you, Jason, for having me, and especially in this momentous occasion with your 1 year anniversary.
Right. And I didn't realize until Facebook started giving us notifications. I was like, oh, all right. Yeah, that sounds about right. That works. And it wasn't a clear cut start. Like, quite literally, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show or not, but quite literally it ended up being where I sat in a room and interviewed some friends. And then Aaron Argostrom and Eric Fine, basically, I blamed those two. And Aaron and I were supposed to share some whiskey at DEMA, and we never got a chance to. So we did on live, and they were like, this is great. We should do more of that. And I was like, you want me to drink whiskey and talk about diving? I'll drink whiskey and talk about diving, apparently. And we normally have pretty good viewership for me to do that. And I guarantee it's my guest. It has nothing to do with me and the whiskey. Well, it actually might just be the whiskey. But people tend to join us for that. So before we get fully started, people are going to ask this question. If you want to be able to win the free Peregrine dive computer, this is not the actual one. The actual one arrives tomorrow. I got shipping confirmation for that. If you want to win the free Shearwater Peregrine, you need to throw a question in for us, and then Drama Diving and Shearwater page. If you like,
Dad started with his dad at 14. First time, had to come back and circle to that one.
How the philosophy of Shearwater has changed over the years from really it was anything to do with the rest of the market to being a Peregrine, a $50 US dollar computer. How has that progress happen?
It's quite interesting that you mention it, because our roots are indeed in the technical diving market. If you look at the scuba, even though the level of sophistication is very high, the volumes of people in that segment are very small. So if your business plan, it's not typical that you start in the smallest segment possible. Quite the contrary, you go to the base of the pyramid and you start in there. But the intent was not that originally. Bruce had sold a computer-related business, was semi-retired, went into sailing for a while. And while sailing, I believe, in the Caribbean, started getting into scuba diving. And he got in there with a vengeance. He became quite adept at it, to the point where he became a rebreather instructor. One of the complaints back, the company started in 2004. So if you go back in those days, dive computers for technical diving were counterindicated. It was and it was not just a certain segment of training or philosophy, diving philosophy. Even people like Steve Lewis. You being from TDI, you probably know about Steve Lewis. He wrote blogs around why dive computers were counterindicated back in those days, and there's very compelling reasons. Well, in order to address some of those objections and reasons, Bruce started building dive computers. In fact, the very first one that he built, the machine, was not a dive computer in itself, but it was a set of electronics that converted a KISS rebreather, a manual kiss rebreather into an ECCR. Didn't have any decompression information, but it had this massive box of metal box that was reading sensors and firing solenoids with hoses going in and so on. So from then on, he started expanding that to include decompression information, started building more computers, word of mouth started spreading. And so he started selling to his friends. And pretty soon the living room was not enough, moved to the spare bedroom. Then the spare bedroom is not enough. Then now you have to rent an office or a warehouse. It gets bigger, and then you rent a bigger one, and all of a sudden you have a factory. And now we're in our third location, and we just finished our move in December to have twice as much floor space. We have been 3 years in a row in Canada's 500 fastest growing companies, and ranking in a solid center between those, actually higher than the 250th. So it's been a good wild ride throughout those period. When we started in technical diving at the tip, we've been percolating to more basic levels of diving. In 2014, I believe, in the Petrol, we introduced the recreational mode where we had simplified menus that were making it easier for more basic divers to understand the computer in itself. Then we come up with the Perdix and the Perdix AI early in 2016. And when we started with the AI, it was after having thought that this would be a big appeal for recreational divers trying to serve those segments of the market. Then, to our surprise, we started finding that many side mounters and rebreather divers actually like diving with transmitters. And
that was a whole thing when you guys did that. It was like, I can't believe they're going to put AI into a tech computer. And we actually did a drama diving, and they some people changed my opinion on like using transmitters solely. That's definitely a thing. But yeah, that was a whole sorry to interrupt, but that was a whole thing. You guys in the air integration.
Yeah. So. Going back to your question on how it was, definitely, yeah, it was a point in time where we were technical dive computers for technical divers. And I remember it was probably 2010 when I was doing my research and due diligence as a diver on what kind of computer to buy, and pick up the phone. I think it was Bruce that answered and started making all these questions. How does it work, about gas changes and so on? And will you have transmitters? Nope. This is a technical dive computer. We're not doing that. If you want transmitters, you got to go somewhere else for a different type of computer. So okay, just checking what kind of company this is, and what kind of computer you're building. Is it compatible with my philosophy of diving and so on? But yeah, you're totally right. There was once upon a time where it was just for technical divers.
Yeah. And that's the way it's progressed. I mean, we were talking before the show started of, when we first started looking at getting in, and we didn't have, the capabilities. And then, all right, so we're going to do a nitrox mode. So now that we did a nitrox mode, then recreational shops can have it. But we're only I had to write a dissertation on why we should be a Shearwater dealer. And they wouldn't even research who was close to us. I literally had to go, okay, the closest dealer is this person. We don't have the same demographic because of this, and I should have Shearwater computers because of this. I felt like I was asking them to the prom. It was freaking amazing. And they finally came through with it, or we finally got accepted into it. But let's see here. We have a couple of we got some brown nosers in here. We're going to throw them up because I just want to put them up there. Kevin, what makes Shearwater so appealing? And you can answer or not answer any of these. Then we've got, why is Shearwater the best dive computer ever made? You guys just want a free computer. I see how y'all are. Rick has an actual one. Since we're kind of on the topic, I was going to wait till later for it, and I think we all know the answer and what's not going to be the answer. But any plans to make the Peregrine Air integrated?
Oh, there was a specific set of criteria and goals we wanted to achieve with the Peregrine. One specific one, very important, was to be able to have divers that didn't have an $800, $900, even $1,000 budget for a dive computer have access to a Shearwater computer, particularly the ones that are at a more earlier stage in their progression throughout their career, or not career, but in their development as a scuba diver. In order to do that, we had to make sure, because we're not going to be outsourcing our manufacturing somewhere else. We're doing it in Canada, designing it in Canada, manufacturing it over there. So there were a couple of things that needed to be done in order to be compliant with that goal. And one of those was the AI. Another one was the compass. The electronic compass was removed. Electronic compasses need to be calibrated manually, every single one of them. And it takes time. And if we manage to shave off some minutes from the building time, there's the shop rate. Now we bring the cost further down, and we'll be able to pass on those cost savings into the end customers. And the capability to handle helium mixes or trimix was another one, because we were thinking this is going to be a computer for somebody at an earlier stage in their progression. They might not be yet ready or ever be ready to go helium. They might be perfectly comfortable staying with nitrox. So that's the feature set that we built in there. There's a next step in requirements. If you need more than that, then the next step would be Perdix. So that's where we left it at.
Nice. And I think that has been the burning question. That's the best answer I've ever heard for that, because people are like, oh, it's $450. If like the traditional, like you kind of said it much nicer, but everybody's like, why doesn't it have a compass? You want a compass, buy a Perdix. Like, okay, well, no, why? like can we talk about the why as opposed to just yelling at me to get a more expensive computer? Like, same thing with the air integrated. Why no air integrated? Well, because because you should get a Perdix for that. Like, you're right. You shave all the things. Now, in all fairness to Rick in that question, the Perdix was never getting AI, and we were never getting nitrox, and we never get to know when a computer's coming out. So the answer is no, Rick, but in a Shearwater no of who knows what's going to happen on Friday, because they could be like, hey, guess what? We got air integrated peregrines on Friday because we ain't going to tell you anything until then. We have a couple of really good ones that I want to grab here. They're taking my job away from me. Eric Fine has actually a good one. We're going to come back around to a couple other ones that Jess had. Do you see transmitters decreasing in size? And what's your guys' interaction with the transmitters? And I think that's a good, where do you get your transmitters from, and how does that whole thing work? Because I don't know if everybody understands that or not. So transmitters decreasing in size, and where do they come from?
Our transmitters are from Pelagic Pressure Systems. It's a division of Aqualung. It was, I believe, founded by Mike Hollis back in the day, part of AUP. The transmitters, any transmitter with the FCC ID, Federal Communications Commission ID of MH8A, will be compatible with a Shearwater dive computer and vice versa. So it could be branded Aqualung, it could be branded Oceanic, Sherwood, it will still work. We consciously chose that transmitter because it was already in the market. It was already pretty popular. We're quite open to the fact that if you already have an Oceanic transmitter from back in the day, it will likely work. So it was just to make it easier for customers to get access to those transmitters. In terms of the size, there might be some room for improvement, but again, in the case of the transmitter currently in the market, it's made by Pelagic Pressure Systems. We don't make them ourselves. We do receive them, we do inspect them, we make some checks. We have collaborated with pelagic, identified some points where that could be strengthened. Those have been strengthened, and yeah, that's what we have been working so far.
Yeah, and size is limited. I mean, it's fairly limited with that transmitter. If you look at the battery size, you definitely have to switch the battery, and then are you sacrificing life? Because that battery is almost the size. By the time you pressurize it and put the O-rings in and get all the electronics in there, that's and not saying there's not room to make it smaller, but that's we definitely have to have a different battery to make that happen because that takes up a lot of room. We kind of have addressed this, but I want to get it sliced off the table so we can get to the next part. How has your marketing strategy had to shift given the emphasis on recreational computers currently, particularly the Peregrine, given the historic path in technical diving where Shearwater was founded? So we kind of talked about, we didn't specifically talk about any marketing strategy. Where have you guys changed your focus, or have you just added to your focus to make that happen?
It has changed. For instance, we were very heavy into dive physiology, very nerdy articles, and not to say that we're abandoning that stage, but at the same time, now that we have also another different kind of audience, and I'll pick on our blog posts, for instance. We have a Shearwater blog, and we try really hard to bring material that is of value to our audience. So you'll see things like physiological impacts of using high O2 pressures or breathing high O2 pressures in different aspects of your eyesight, things that are very specific. But at the same time, now that we have to consider newer divers, for instance, we followed the adventure of a 14-year-old girl in the UK as she started as an open water diver, and she wrote a blog herself. And this is my experience. This is the Peregrine that I was using. Another little nuance that we have been changing, for instance, was in the campaign before we announced that the Peregrine was coming out. I don't know if you guys noticed that we had on our Facebook channel this short videos of why did you started diving and where has diving taken you? And we started interviewing several people like Natalie Gibb, Dr. Doug Ebersole, and so on. And they would just take a little video on their phone, send it over, and we would put it in there. The idea is to start conveying, look, everybody started at one point in time. Everybody was a newbie at one point in time. I mean, we have these big names that are big in diving, but at one point in time, they started like this. And let's hear it from their own word. So now we're going to the beginning, and that's why we brought to you a Peregrine. Now it's available for somebody that doesn't have that $800 budget. Now it's available in a simplified format that it's perfectly capable for everything that you're going to be doing in your recreational diving, or perhaps even dipping your toe into intro to tech and decompression procedures. You have the capability to do three gases. So a three gas dive, it's still a technical dive, and it's still plausible and actually quite manageable to be done with a Peregrine.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's a great question, and yeah, little changes here and there.
Yep. And then you guys started adding demo centers recently too, right? That's a new thing where people can actually try out Shearwaters at specific locations. And they're dedicated to having those there for you to be able to try them out, which has been a very nice addition. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. Oh, yes. And the whole console. That's right. Yep. So we're
Yeah, so we have yes, the demo center was another point in for us to be making it available for the new divers so that they experience the Shearwater environment, the ecosystem, and once they get to see how a Shearwater works, once they get to see the color screen and so on, they get to know us a little better, and perhaps even get to choose us when it comes time to buy their own computer. In terms of the console, we know that there are many dive shops out there that use consoles with their rental fleets, with their students. It's not necessarily a matter of is it the optimal way to set up or gear up a diver, but it's in many cases it is the practical way that a dive shop can tie more or less permanently a dive computer to a regulator to a tank,
Mhm.
and thereby reduce a little bit the likelihood that it got lost, that fell off a wrist, or so on. So yeah, we're trying to work giving tools to the dive shops so that they can do sales in an easier way.
Yeah. All right, we are popping up in questions, so I'm glad that you threw that up there. Since we jumped on that topic, I will. Is there a Bluetooth connection for the Peregrine? And
Yes, there is.
yes, there absolutely is. So it's the same app progression as the previous ones. Um, Ooh, I love this one. This one, I'm fine. I don't care how long we need to talk about this one. Any possibility of upgrade to allow Tarik or Perdix AI to use more than two AIs simultaneously? ah, ah.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
the official position
Yeah.
from Shearwater is that I cannot confirm or deny anything.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that we do hear and take into account all suggestions. This is a suggestion that has been coming up more and more. You may or may not know. Well, of course you do know, Jason. But talking to the person asking the question may or may not know that we do regular firmware updates free of charge, and with those, there's new features that often come in there. It's not just a matter of fixing bugs, but bringing in new features. I remember back in the day when I bought my Predator. Predators only had one salinity setting. There was
Mhm.
no fresh or salt. There was the EN whatever that conforms to a middle ground of brackish water, I think. And I remember writing to Shearwater and saying, "You must put in salt and fresh." I I I I don't like this being a little bit off, 1 foot off than the rest of the team that I'm diving with,
Mhm.
and just because the salinity setting is not there. And I remember our current director of engineering responding to my inquiry, explaining how he wants to keep simple menus and how it wants to keep the interface clean and so on, and adding more features. You really have to think hard, and so okay, fine. I read I see. I give up. A
Yep.
couple of weeks later, there's a firmware update and there's the salinity setting. I'm like, yes,
Yeah, true
thank you.
Shearwater fashion. Like I said, Wednesday. This is Wednesday's answer. Friday, it could be a very completely different answer that they already had in the works or that they're changing right now. So, the
So
answer
to
is
your
Wednesday night. There is only two AI connections. Who knows what tomorrow is going to be though? Traditional.
yeah, we take it into consideration. I cannot promise. I cannot give implementation. I cannot promise implementation. I cannot give a timeline, but I can promise you that we hear you and we don't ignore those. We hear you. We act on many of those. Most of our new features coming up come from feedback like yours. So stay tuned.
Excellent. I love that answer. I really would be interested in seeing that that take place. Oh, Tom up in Alaska. Tom, yours and John's Shearwaters are sitting actually in front of me. I gotta ship yours out. Tom is in Alaska. Tom has a question about how's the LCD display hold up under cold surface temps post ice dive, -20 Fahrenheit, -25 C. Those are not synonymous, but or actually they're probably pretty close, right? Yeah. Uh Tom, this is a question we probably should ask beforehand, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I think -40 Fahrenheit and Celsius are the same.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about
yeah,
25. I
look at
can
those.
tell you that there are certain European testings for CE that need to be done at -25. Um, but I don't know off the top of my head myself.
Gotcha.
Um, I do know that we do sell computers to, for instance, the U.S. Antarctic Exploration Team is a government agency. ship those out to them, and they're working over there. I do know that many explorers, Becky Schott, have been doing exploration in the Antarctic with our computers. So I personally don't know of any testing to those temperatures. We might have those. Our engineers might know better. I just don't have the answer off the top of my head. If I had to bet, I would say it holds up okay,
Yeah.
but I don't have evidence to
Tom will let
myself.
us know because his computer's on the way like tomorrow to him. So we'll see what
Yeah.
ends up happening. Just got to make it to Alaska. All right. So Jesse's got a long question, and I love this question. Again, this is going to be the same answer. This is a Wednesday answer. Someone posted a spoof that you guys would be getting games integrated into the computers as software update upon request. And I think some people even called you to ask for it. Hilarious. But what's going to take that in my reality? My hopes are up now. I mean, that's having games to be able to deco on a little game, little worm going back and forth like YouTube used to have, like something like that.
Yeah, it's not a new concept. Several computers have already done this in the past. I was talking with one of our engineers. Shout out to Mitch Burton, or the engineer that I was talking about this a couple of years ago, and about the philosophy on this, and his point to me was that if there's anything that we add into the software that has the potential to make your computer crash, we should not be adding it. Not
Good
to
answer.
say that the computer itself is not reliable or that the code is not reliable. That's not the point. But again, echoing the words that Tyler, our director of engineering, was conveying to me when I was asking about salt and fresh water, the more simple and focused that you have your code and your processes, the more reliable it can be, or the easier to make it reliable. So rather than start running risks with reliability for the sake of entertainment, we focus our code and our energy in making it very reliable, and not have a computer rebooting mid dive, or you're already diving on a rebreather and all of a sudden it's rebooting and then it's asking you to calibrate while you're underwater. That is not good.
Mm-mm.
So
So yeah, and that
yeah.
simplistic thing, that I love that vein of the simplistic, and it's the vein of tech diving, right? That was the whole argument. You messaged Nat. Natalie's actually the one that got me thinking about, all right, transmitters are okay. Yeah, I'm still stuck on the SPG, like, and you guys actually have a battery readout in your transmitter, which is what actually changed my mind, because I can see what the battery is of the transmitter, which was my sticking point on other transmitters. But that's that. But simplistic is the way to go. So my biggest qualm with some of them is the rechargeable battery stuff. I have an issue with rechargeable. I love the AA battery thing. We do have a question from Bill Thomas. What is the best AA battery for the Perdix, or the Petrol, or the Predator had AA too?
Predator.
Yeah.
Predator, it needs 3.6 volts,
Okay.
a SAP.
So it has to.
Perdix and Petrol can use anything from 1.2 to 4 point something, 4.2,
Mm-hmm.
I think, something like that. Best one, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
Okay.
Energizer has it on its website that it is leak resistant. I think it's the verbiage that they use. And not to say that you cannot use any, carbon zinc battery that you get at the dollar store. It will work. Um, However, you have to be protective of your computer for leaks. It's quite a quite common failure point that we see, and we advise with every new computer, every new product, there's a card in the box that says make sure that you remove the battery if you're not going to be diving for a long period of time. If you don't dive during the winter, for instance, and the battery, the AA alkaline battery, is near depleted, you leave it in there, it could leak, it could damage some of the components in there. So ultimate lithium is a pretty decent one in terms of protection against leaks. The SAF battery that we use in the Predator is also pretty decent. I believe it's an encased a stainless steel body, and that's sealed, and so that's pretty protective. One of the things that I will say about the SAF batteries and petrols of Perdix, though, you got to watch out because the discharge pattern is they maintain voltage and all of a sudden they die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened when diving on a revo, the revo that I dive in a lake here near my house, about 30 minutes away. Um, I It was fine when I did my pre-jump checklist. When I'm getting into the water, I'm getting an orange signal on the shaft, and then about 1 hour time frame, the controller dies, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's time to thumb the dive and go on my secondary carrying a nerd and finish the dive on the nerd. But yeah, just one thing. SAFs are great, except for that little thing
Uh-huh.
that it doesn't give you a lot of warning when it
Yeah.
dies.
Yeah, and I've seen the same thing. And I haven't had it die, but I've seen this similar situation where you're like everything's good, and suddenly it's not on my Prism 2. So it's the exact same thing, playing with those SAFs versus double A's, and sometimes it's better to go through a couple of double A's than it is to go through, I guess, a SAF to going through regular alkaline versus SAF. So, question about, since we talked about the Predator a little bit, is there an end of life for Predator or updates? What's going on with Predator updates versus EOL?
Predators are close to our heart. Personally, I have mine. One of our engineers, software engineers, wanted to borrow mine, and I'll lend it to you, but it's not changing ownership. It's mine. I bought it with my money. It got sentimental value, and we've been trying to maintain Predators and support for it for a long time. The fact is that we're running out of parts for them. Um, the, we officially, our position is we do not service them. Um, we may still have some spares for some basic things, but we cannot get the parts anymore. So we cannot service them. In terms of the firmware that you were specifically asking about, if you recall, the memory size on the Predator, it's much smaller than that of the Petrol or the Perdix. So it comes a time when the newer updates are occupying more space, and it's not convenient to try to overload such a small memory in the Predator. So some time ago, we did a cutoff, no more firmware updates for the Predator. Again, it's a matter of restrictions with the components and the parts that it is made out of. That said, mine keeps on working. It's perfectly capable of doing a dive. Like I say, I keep it close to my heart, and I can take it diving every now and then if I have a SAFT battery running, laying around.
Nice. All right. So Heidi Anderson's got a question, and there's a couple in the same vein as this, and I'll throw this up and then throw a couple of the other ones up. What are the differences between Shearwater computers and other diving computers? And some people, made the jokingly brown nosing comments of they're the most amazing things. What makes them so special? But I think this is a real true one, knowing Heidi. And what are the differences? What makes Shearwater different? Especially when it comes to like we're putting on most of the rebreathers, and what makes Shearwater stand out?
Um, it's no secret, so I have no qualms in releasing to the competition a little bit of our secret sauce. But one aspect that to me as a diver is the use of open source algorithms, something that is transparent to divers, meaning that as a diver, we're not springing up any surprises to you. We heard stories, and you might know Chris from TDI.
Mm-hmm.
SDI. We were having an interview in Spanish with TDI SDI Latin America the other day, and he was telling me stories about when he was part of a crew in a dive boat in Galapagos of these divers just throwing lines into the water, and he's like, "These divers, come on, this is a protected area. They know they're supposed to be fishing in here." So he's
Mm-hmm.
putting in his game face and just gonna let them know that they're not supposed to be fishing. And no, they pull out at the end of the line. There's a dive computer, and it's doing deco so that the dive computer doesn't lock them out from the rest of the dive trip.
Yeah.
Why? Because depending on certain behavior during your dive or during your profile or certain repetitive patterns, your expected deco plans change. So now you may have done your gas planning for a certain profile with a certain thing, and while you're underwater, that dive runtime arbitrarily changes. That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not yeah. And so as a diver, then you try to learn more about these algorithms, and you try to plan beforehand, and try to account for those eventualities. And there's no information out there because it's a proprietary algorithm. It's all closed, so it's a little box of surprises. That's one thing that makes us different. Many computers, and I'm not saying all of them, but many computers use their own flavor of an algorithm that they might say it's based on Bielman, but based on Bielman doesn't make it Bielman
Mm-hmm.
per se. And so, how do you plan for that? That's one thing. But overall, going to the more higher level and elevated, I guess we could say that we're divers, all over us in sales, in engineering. There's a lot of divers. We regularly go out and test our own stuff. We dive here in British Columbia, cold, dark waters. When the
Mm-hmm.
temperature started to warm up, there's plankton bloom, so low visibility is another issue. Aging eyes as we grow older, and we cannot longer see that. We start to appreciate the value of a bright display with big numbers that are easily readable. And then going all the way to a video that Bruce did a long time ago, talking about, and I'm seeing your run from Scapa, being
Mm-hmm.
in Scapa flow, in heavy current, in low visibility, and you need to do a gas switch. It better be an easy gas switch. That point in time, it's not the time to pull out the manual and try to figure out what combination of button presses do I have to do to make this gas switch. It's got to be intuitive, easy. It's not something that you have to have the manual laminated. I have laminates of manuals for our computer, other computers, not ours computers, other computers that I before I was working with Shearwater, that you would carry in your save a dive kit,
Mm-hmm.
just so that before you dive, make sure that I know how to operate this thing. That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
You're already task loaded when you're underwater. You got to make it easy, and it's got to be helping you. It's not going to be taxing you and loading you, burdening you with more things to do.
Yeah, just like adding some more AI capabilities, more transmitters to a Perdix would help out a little bit on that. Just saying to make that gas switch a little bit easier since you were talking about that.
Yeah.
Transferring over, similar question: why would you recommend a Tarik over a Perdix or vice versa? You'll have to excuse Cody's typos. He's from Michigan, so we just kind of let that go. Love you, Cody. Yes. Perdix versus Tarik, what's your take on the two? Pros, cons.
The Tarik, in my opinion, well, not in my opinion, it's actually a factual statement. It's our most capable dive computer. It does everything that the Perdix can do and a little bit more. It's got a few more things like free diving mode. It's got four buttons, meaning that you can go in reverse. If you missed a certain item in the menu, with a Perdix, you got to cycle through the whole thing in order to get back to that choice again. With the Tarik, you have the four buttons, so you can backtrack, and one of the four you can even program to do a certain task with a single button press. You cannot necessarily or easily do that with the Perdix. Another thing that I like on the Perdix, let's see if you can see the north marker over there. Because of the round display, there's a different way of arranging the same information, and one of those to me is that's really useful is the compass arrow. I know on the Perdix there's another one, a mini compass that can also be permanent on your home screen and helps you out. But the compass arrow, I find it a little bit more easy to use, more ergonomic would be the word. So personally, I like the Tarik. I remember when it was still a project and we were evaluating it before launch, testing it out, making a comment in one of our meetings that when we come out with this thing, I'm not taking it off. I'm sleeping with this thing. It's going to with me everywhere. I can go to. I When we launched, I wrote a blog post on that on how now I can take my Shearwater to a wedding and not have people looking weird at me. Look at that weirdo with a
They're
that
still going to
computer.
look weird at the split fins when you show up with the split fins and the Shearwater, right?
Definitely, yeah. Or when you're traveling, there's little games that I used to play back when it was a new product. Remember measuring the differences in cabin pressure and seeing how my tissue chart would be moving, and
Mhm.
yeah. So that portability is another big plus for me. You like double A's?
Yeah.
Tarik doesn't have a double A; it's got a rechargeable battery. That's a difference. But there's people that prefer a rectangular display. Some people that are perfectly fine with a round display.
Yep. So Daryl was, I put the question up there while you're talking about it. Daryl's asking about floating compass dot feature on the Perdix. So that's kind of limited because of the fact that it doesn't have a round display, so it wouldn't be able to have that floating compass. Is where that design came in. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
We do have a mini compass, but it can be
Yeah.
counterintuitive if you having it go throughout the perimeter of a rectangular shape, and it could lead
Mm-hmm.
to inaccuracies.
Gotcha.
A round display is more ergonomic for that purpose.
I like that. That's very good. Somebody had a question. I'll throw it up here, but it essentially is, what's new and on the way for Shearwater? Why don't you
we
explain why there is no answer to new and on the way, I guess is probably the best way of doing that.
I'll do so. We're an engineering heavy company, and we have to keep them busy. There's always new projects that we're planning on. Some work out fine, some don't work out. We have on our process several gates, we call them, where we uh, examine the progress up to this point, examine the findings. Do we proceed or not proceed? Go, no go. Then we go to the next gate and so on. And until we're perfectly sure that it's a computer that's or a product that it's worthy of our divers, our end customers, we don't release it. We are against pre-announcing or giving a promise by in 3 months we're gonna launch a new doohickey, and then in a month and a half we find out that there's a bug or there's a certain mechanical part that could be strengthened. We want to have the freedom to adapt to those circumstances and make the best product that we can throw out into the wilderness out there. Make sure that it's something that's worth of you, our customers. So with that in mind, we don't pre-announce. And once we go to market with something, we're pretty sure that it's solid.
Nice. I just want to remind everybody who is here that in order to be entered into the free Peregrine drawing, you have to ask a question. So throw a question up there. You have to like Shearwater and like a drama diving. I'll check it after we pick the people randomly. This one is a rebreather kind of question. I know exactly where he's going with this one. Or something similar. So James Edelson, are there plans for new connection updates to the Petrol for a different connector? This is that 4-pin, 5-pin commentary that's been going around lately. So if you'd like to address the 4-pin, 5-pin and resources on how to get them and yada, 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 because I've heard a lot of different things about that. So go ahead.
The 4-pin is for analog connections. We have a dive can digital bus controlling certain ECCRs. For an analog connection, say whether it's an analog controller in some rebreather or, well, we don't make analog controllers anymore, but whether it's an analog monitor in some rebreathers where it's manually controlled, then that's where the 4-pin comes in. A 5-pin is our digital controllers or monitors, depending on how it's configured and depending on the rebreather. 4-pin is for analog connections. We believe that this is a superior connection to that of a Fisher. Fisher has been traditionally used, a Fisher connector has traditionally used for analog connections in many rebreathers. And we do have a Fisher offering, but it's more of a legacy of the market. We want to service customers that already have a rebreather with Fisher connections, and thereby we have petrols that have a Fisher connection, and so on. With the 4-pin, it's a little bit newer, and we don't have as much of a legacy in there, but it is a superior connector, meaning it's better suited for the depths that we're diving them. It's easier to inspect and make sure that they're not corroded, that they're in serviceable, dive worthy state. And the problem that we see with opening it to every single dive shop and say resort dive center is that somebody may have a rebreather that is wired for a Fisher, and now they want to move in themselves into a 4-pin connector, and we're not 100% confident that all the dive shops that we have as our dealers will be able to provide the support needed to rewire a rebreather. Shearwater ourselves, we're not set up to rewire rebreathers in terms of our customer care people. We're not set up to be taking calls and guiding people on how to touch that. Furthermore, it's not within our jurisdiction, for lack of a better word. The rebreather manufacturers are our customers, and we're not going to get into that area of responsibility that is theirs for good reasons. It's theirs. Shearwater is not going to be overriding them. So they are available. They are available to certain specific outlets. If you, for instance, call Mike Young from Kiss Rebreathers, Mike Young could sell you some. Narcat 90. Narcat 90 is in the UK. They are our service center. They have a lot of technical know-how and knowledge and do a lot of products related to rebreathers. They are set up to work on rebreathers. So Narcat 90 could sell you the 4-pins, but they're not widely available everywhere. If we open it up, we don't want somebody in a little dive shop in Roatan or Utila trying to jerry rig the rebreather, and then something goes wrong. So it's just a little bit of caution as we make more and more progress replacing the Fisher connections out in the wilderness in the market. We may eventually decide to move in and make it more and more available to regular dive shops. But for now, at this point in time, it is available on certain outlets that have the knowledge to work on rebreathers.
Nice. Good answer. Since we're on that topic there, where'd it go? Somebody commented. Is the Blinky Hud still made supported?
Yes, it is. However, it is the Blinky Hud that is digital. We used to make a long time ago analog blinkies, blinking lights. We no longer make those. Again, I'll pick on Narca 90. Narca makes some of them themselves. They could be a source of analog blinky hubs. Fathom Divers in Florida, Charlie Robertson from Fathom Rebreathers, they also make one, a fairly new one. The ones that we make are only digital to be used in our dive can bus. So in rebreathers like the JJCCR, they use, in fact, John Peterson, the principal at JJCCR, prefers the Blinky Hud over the Nerd.
Mm-hmm.
And he is one of our biggest customers of those Blinky Hud. But they are digital. They will not work in an analog environment.
Nice. Yeah, lots of comments on the 4 or 5 pin and stuff like that. So if you want to jump in the comments, I think you answered their questions, but I think they might have more. So later on, you don't have to do it now, but if you would afterwards, go ahead and jump in there. I need to answer Bill Anderson. Bill, when will you be giving away a Tarik? How about the 2-year anniversary? We make it that far, and I'll give away a Tarik at that point in time. We'll discuss that, but not today. 2-year anniversary, we'll come back around to that one. This was a really good question. Where'd it go? Every time somebody comments, they shift. So it was any prototypes. You don't have to be specific, but any prototypes that you really like that never came to market. Yes or no question. Just, is there a magical Shearwater that's sitting there that you like that never got to market?
There are some machines that never got to market. Something that I really liked that never got to market. The ones that I really like have gone to market.
Gotcha.
I go back to that comment when I say I'm never taking this off. This is such a cool thing. I remember one of the really cool things that I liked about the Tarik, and now we distributed that to all our computers, was the Surface GF feature.
Yes. Yeah.
We launched that in May 28, 2018. And I thought, this is so cool. This is awesome. Give me a whole new level of situational awareness while I'm diving, and I'm never taking out the Tarik away from me, because if I would need to jump into the water because I'm visiting Jason, and Jason says, "Hey, come on over. I'm just about to go a dive," and didn't plan on that. I got the Tarik with me. I can. Yeah, I can work it out and do something like that. There could be some interesting color things that came out of prototypes. Actually, let me show you.
You got something special. I like it.
Something special, yeah. So, see this special
Perdix,
yeah, with a metal.
Yeah.
It's a little bit heavier. Stainless steel, even though there's stainless in the name, is not rust proof. It will stain eventually. So at the end of the day, even though this is a prototype, the bezel with the plastic is superior in many aspects. In terms that it'll never rust, it'll give you a lighter weight Perdix. So nonetheless, some people might like the look.
I got my petrol switched out to the titanium. I sent that off to get my controller switched over, which is nice. It gives a little extra protection. I really like that, and on the controller for the Prism too, which you can do that with any of the petrols, sending them off to get them switched out. And it's really reasonable to get them switched out. John Hoddeman has a good question. I'm going to answer the first half of it, then have you answer the second half. But does Shearwater have customer support that can help you with walking you through the computer setup and technical questions? John, Shearwater does. And also, would your local dive shop / instructor, when you take a technical course, they're going to walk you through, or any course really, they're going to walk you through it. And the local dive shops are definitely so if you're going and looking for one, that's one of the biggest things. If you're buying online, you're not going to get that support. If you're going to your local dive shops and stopping in, they're going to 100% help you out with that computer. Is hopefully they understand it if they're selling them, so they could walk you through it. And then you can go ahead. I know there's YouTube channels and stuff like that, but go ahead and answer the second half of that on your side.
Definitely, in our customer service department, all our people are instructors, dive instructors, and all of them are passionate divers. So you call us up, and we'll just geek out on dive sites and how to do this. And pretty soon we're talking about how do you do your configuration on your side mount rigging, and what do you put on your home screen, and so on. And we love talking diving. We're divers, a lot of the diving in the activity is social, and being in the dive boat or in the parking lot, debriefing about the dive, or just sharing stories. That's a big part of the attractive that we find in this passion of ours. And I can definitely tell you, and we're tooting our own horn in here, but I tell you that that passion comes through when with the interactions when you call us up to help you set up your computer. Sometimes it gets to the point where I remember one call when somebody's calling us to ask us about I'm taking this medication and is it advisable for me to go diving? Like, we don't go that far. We're not medical doctors or pharmacists, so we cannot comment on medications and things like that. But it gets to that point. The point being that we're divers and we have a good rapport with the customers that are calling us to have those kind of conversations.
Nice. Brock's got a question about the the Tarik. Any possibility of a Perdix type bungee band for the Tarik? I've seen aftermarket ones, but nothing from factory, right?
That is correct. There's nothing from factory, but there are several out there that have done it, and they're fine. I I personally haven't had any issues with these the factory silicone straps. They're very strong, um, and I don't I haven't seen a need to go bungee. They're also very stretchy. If you're looking for the stretchiness of your bungee, um, see it. I've tried to rip them off, and they don't rip off.
Hmm.
Yeah, they go pretty decent battery of testing, and it works for me. But if you would prefer bungees, there are ways to do bungee,
Nice.
not supplied by Shearwater.
Nice. Oh, you know what? I'm surprised this hasn't come up in here with the Tarik. And it hasn't. So there has been a push overall to be able to get notifications from your phone onto the computers. And you should have seen this one coming. Other companies have done it. Sunto did it. And I think Garmin does too. Is there a plan? Which I'm sure the answer is no, but you know, same old, same old. But what's your take on that? How about that?
Um, it is possible to do it if we have enough requests from those. It might make it into a different firmware release. There's also changes that would need to be done in the interfacing software in the Shearwater cloud. So we take it into advice. If it's something that a customer needs, we'll be logging those and putting them in. So it's not impossible, but I cannot promise. You know why I need to
Yeah,
give this answer. So I'll write it down. I'll forward it to the engineers and the internally with the company.
that's
And
after the additional air integration. After, but that after that one, maybe down a little bit. Maybe write that a couple times. Put it down a little bit later. That yeah.
okay,
Yeah, you'll pass it
good to
on. I
know.
got it. We're good. Let's see here. I'm gonna go blind on this one and throw it up. Can gas mix be added to a Perdix while underwater? I was on a dive with two Perdix computers. I forgot to put my gases into my backup. They were correct in my primary. Could I have added the gases while on my deco stop to my backup Perdix?
Yes, you can. There's two menus in the Perdix Petrol in all our computers actually. One is called the system setup. That's only available in the Surface. Usually, system setup is more comprehensive. You can do and program your gases in there, and that's fine. Usually, that's what I do when I'm inland. But there's also the dive setup. Dive setup is available underwater. One of the functions that it allows you to do is exactly what you say. You forgot your gas, and now you want to program them while underwater. You can do that. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, another +1 for more AI transmitters. So we can get that up there. Any plans to update desktop software or iOS app? You've just been on the hot seat tonight. Jeez.
Yes, we have been updating it regularly. The we have the mobile app and the desktop app, both of them. Um, I don't know if Eric is referring to the old one. There used to be, say, in 2009, all the way to probably 2016, used to be a different desktop interface, a legacy one using a framework called Adobe Air. Adobe
Hmm.
no longer supports that, and it's already EOL, end of life. So we had to create a different one, and that's the Shearwater Cloud. And like the firmware in our computers, it gets updated on a regular basis, and there's a lot of new features and things that have been added over time, and just like features for the computer that you may want for transmitters on a single computer for side mount or technical divers. We take on suggestions on what you would like to see on a Shearwater cloud, both on a desktop environment or on a mobile environment.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's I've always been confused and had trouble getting. I mean, I've got multiple Shearwater, so I've got my CCR one, my two on my CCR, and I've got my two for technical instruction for open circuit, and then one of those becomes my backup, and then any other one that I'm trialing type of thing. So trying to get those to all upload to the same spot and actually all link has always been an issue with me. I've talked to Shearwater support multiple times with it, and they've done well with me, but it still comes back to the same thing every once in a while where it's just kind of like, it's not linking again. It's not linking again. It's not linking again. Some of the things I'm going to get to, but is it this way on multiple reboots? I know that with the Prism 2, you should leave your computer connected to when you do your update so that everything gets updated. Is that way with all rebreathers? Like, should you do that? That's what I was told. So that the motherboard and everything, it's all the communications there.
I the way I update the one for the Revo, it can be connected or not.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't affect. The reason why I'm hesitating is
Yeah,
that
it's fine.
I don't know 100%, and
Yeah.
if Hollis officially says leave it connected, then pay attention to what Hollis says and do as
Yeah.
Hollis says.
Yeah. Those are my service
Uh,
class. So I was curious
yeah,
about that if that was if so interesting.
but in my personal experience, it could work connected or disconnected. It
Gotcha.
works fine on
Yeah.
both. Again, I'm diving a Revo, not a Hollis.
Right.
So if Hollis says do it this way, do it the way that Hollis is saying.
Yeah. I was just curious about other rebreathers if that was the case. So okay, cool. This is an interesting question here. Is it possible to extend the range of AI transmitters? The ones in my rebreather tanks are a little flaky when my arms are out front. You have to kind of fix physics, but
It works better with line of sight. In my particular case, on the Revo, I have the transmitters coming over the shoulder, and in the same strapping that has the MAV, the manual addition valves, that contains the transmitter. So they're at around this position for me. I never had any issues with that. I know that Jared Hires used to have them in a certain place in his Optima, and he was having some problems with it, and then he got hoses, different lengths of hoses. So the way to address that is to put your transmitter on a high pressure hose. Don't forget the spool. You'll need the
Mhm.
spool to go into the high pressure hose and the transmitter, and then route them in such a way that you put them where it's going to have more or less line of sight
Mhm.
with your computer. If you're referring to the AI on a nerd, it's difficult to move the nerd. But if it's on a Perdix or on a Tarik, and you lost comms, move your wrist a little bit to the back or closer to the transmitter, and that's usually enough to get you comms again. Personally, I just put them in here. I know that Bruce Partridge had them right behind him in his rebreather. There's the Revos. There's a weight platform in here, and he
Mhm.
had them right beside the weight platform. So somewhere where there's not as much metal and tanks, in between the transmitter signal and the receiver on the dive computer, and that should help you out.
Nice. This is interesting. Would love to see the ability to upload a custom note to my computer, checklist, deco plan. I think checklist is huge for rebreathers. If you could put in a specific checklist, I know some rebreathers have them. What was the soft? I think it was VX or whatever. You used to have to go through a checklist to actually be able to turn it on, type of stuff. So, would be interesting to be able to see that and be able to store that in there.
I'm writing this one down as well, along with the other two.
Underneath the AI transmitter. See, it's the number 2 or 3.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to bring out on this is that on the Perdix and the Peregrine, not on the Petrels, but on the Perdix and the Peregrine, you can program those two to have the startup screen with any kind of graphic or text that you want. You can put in your own personal logo or the Deep Stop Scuba logo in there. Yep. But again, it's only the startup screen. It's only there for a few seconds. So it's probably not practical to put in there an image of a checklist.
Right.
It wouldn't necessarily work.
Yeah.
I personally carry my checklist on my phone.
Yeah, I've got a phone, and then I use a card printer and print off. When we print off our certification card, so I just print off checklists. So we haven't done it yet. We've been planning on doing it for open water students too, doing a checklist for open water students and going from there. So that's how we do it and put it in there. Somebody's got stickers you can put on the Petrel too. That's gonna have a general checklist on the outside, like a pre-jump checklist.
High pressure, low pressure electronics.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So, yeah. All right. So we are an hour 10. We are past our hour, like we talked about. Plan for 30, 40 minutes, and we'll make it an hour and a half. Yeah. We've gotten through pretty much all of the questions. I don't think there's any burning questions last minute. It would be great if you can go through the comments and kind of hit some of them later on. If you'd be willing to do that, that'd be amazing. We don't have to do that now, but I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and I'll come back and give you a shout later on.
It's been a pleasure. I didn't realize it's been an hour. It's been so fun. Time flew, and it's the old saying, time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you in a minute. All right. Pleasure. All right, guys. Thank you very, very much. Again, thanks, John Cheeseman, for the Dad's Hat whiskey. That answers your question, Bill Anderson. What I was drinking, it was pretty good overall. So just want to give you guys the heads up once again. Thank you very much for our Patreons. I'll throw the Patreon thing in the link or link in the comments. I will throw in the Truck Lagoon trip for next March. Like I said, there are some spots. There's not a ton, but there are some spots left. If you want to join us, we got a really good crew going out to that one. And it's filling up pretty fast with Dirty Dozen, Aaron Argstrom, Truck Lagoon, 10 days. It's going to be amazing. We're on SoundCloud if you want to grab the podcast. We're on YouTube and Facebook. YouTube and Facebook is where this lives. Give us a like and follow over here. You will see that like and follow logo at some point in time and suggested videos later on. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to go through the comments from everybody that asked questions, get a randomized thing. Make sure you guys like a Drama Diving and Shearwater to win that free Peregrine. Like I said, it's coming tomorrow. We will make an announcement in probably early next week. By the time we get through all the questions, take a look at it, compile it, and get it going. Maybe earlier than that, but we will send a message and post it up on our Facebook page. And we want a picture of you with it at some point in time to advertise that you got it and to show you off and so that everybody can see it. But again, thank you. Have a wonderful night. Be safe. And it was wonderful. Like where? Brock, like the Shearwater page on Facebook and like the Drama Diving page on Facebook. And then we will randomly select, since you asked questions, anyone that asked a question in here. I hope that answers your question. All right, beautiful. Again, like and follow over here, and we will see you guys next time in about 2 weeks. I got somebody that I'm trying to get on. We're trying to figure out schedules. So have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys.